Global Forum began barely 24 hours ago, and already we have seen so many faces of Israel. We've heard from the Ethiopian-Israeli woman who returned to the country of her birth as the ambassador of the Jewish state. We've heard from the Haredi woman, mother of 11, who serves as chief of staff to Israel's president, Reuven Rivlin. We've heard voices of hope, of success, of warning. But there is another face to Israel, the face of grief. And you cannot understand the country without seeing that face. Joining us tonight are Leah, Simcha, and Hadar Goldin, who are here to tell us about Hadar Goldin. Hadar was Leah and Simcha's son. Hadar was Sur's twin brother and his IDF comrade, fighting just meters from him in the summer of 2014. Listen, please, to the Goldin family's story of pain and loss.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, I speak before you today as the mother of Lieutenant Hadar Goldin, an Israeli soldier who died at the age of 23 while defending his country, and whose remains are held hostage in Gaza by Hamas, along with another fallen soldier, Sergeant Oron Shaul. Our sad story begins in the summer of 2014. From June 1st through July 7, 2014, nearly 450 missiles were fired upon Israeli civilians from Gaza. Israel commenced Operation Protective Edge, which was intended to put an end to the missile terror and shut down the underground tunnels that Hamas had dug in order to penetrate Israeli civilian centers. Our two sons, Hadar and his twin brother, Tzur, both officers in elite combat units of the IDF, entered Gaza. On August 1st, 2014, 2 hours after Hamas agreed to a ceasefire brokered by the United Nations and the United States, Hamas terrorists emerged from a tunnel located underground the basement of a house in Gaza and ambushed our son Hadar and 2 other Israeli soldiers. The terrorists killed 2 of the soldiers and shot Hadar, dragging him into the tunnel and kidnapping him and another soldier. Hamas' intention was not only to kill Israeli soldiers under cover of a ceasefire, but to kidnap them as well in order to hold them hostage. 36 hours later, after an extensive forensic investigation of evidence found on the site of the attack and inside the tunnel, the IDF declared Hadar dead. We, Hadar's parents, accepted the unacceptable. We have lost a son. Immediately after Hamas violation of the ceasefire, the UN Secretary General, Ban Ki-moon, condemned in the strongest terms the Hamas violation of a mutually agreed humanitarian ceasefire. He added that such moves call into question the credibility of Hamas assurances to the United Nations and demanded the immediate and unconditional release of the captured soldier. The US response to Hamas treachery was just as strong, with both President Obama and Secretary of State Kerry condemning the attack and demanding immediate and unconditional return of Hadar. We parents who live in Israel understand that our children bear a tremendous burden of defending the nation against those who seek to destroy it. We are not the first Israeli parents to lose a beloved child in combat in defense of their country. We sadly, we will not be the last. but perhaps we do suffer a different sort of pain, because our son was not a victim of the war in Gaza, but a victim of a ceasefire, a humanitarian ceasefire brokered and sponsored by the United Nations and the United States. Almost 4 years after, while my son's empty grave in his hometown awaits his return to be buried, while my family's agony continues, we have received nothing but sympathy. At the same time, the international community, at a conference convened in October 2014 by the United Nations, pledged more than $5.4 billion to rebuild Gaza. Humanitarian aid for Gaza, they call it. Not one member state raised an objection that perhaps the international community should not reward Hamas, a serial violator of the international humanitarian law. Not one member state insisted that the very least that Hamas should do before receiving international aid is return my fallen son. People of faith all over the world understand that it is wrong to hold hostage bodies of fallen soldiers. Islam adheres to these principles, and so even the International Committee for the Red Cross has called for the return of Hadar and Oron to Israel for burial in accordance with the Jewish tradition. Hadar, my son, with his unforgettable smile, his incredible paintings, and in his sage writing, who showed how simple it is to love another person. Hadar, who helped those in need and set his mission in life to bring people together, religious and non-religious alike. Why is my son Hadar is still there? Hadar left behind not only us, his grieving parents, but also his 2 brothers and sister, and his young nephews and nieces. The twins that are 3 months old and the last one that was born last week will never know their uncle. And you should also know that Hadar left behind his fiancée. He was killed 30 days before he was supposed to get married. My husband Simcha, my son Tzur, twin brother of Hadar, and I are here today to ask you, distinguished AJC members, to actively be on the right side of history, to help us to fix this injustice. We believe that the best way to motivate Hamas to return the bodies to make it clear that the reconstruction of Gaza is not unconditional, humanitarian versus humanitarian. Quoting Professor Erwin Kotler at the UN Security Council on last December 2017, Hamas, by continuing to illegally withhold the remains of Hadar Goldin and that of Oron Shaul, is in a standing violation of the International Criminal Court prohibition against committing outrages upon the dignity of the deceased by violating their right to interment. And where the inhuman withholding of the remains of Hadar Goldin and Oron Shaul subject the Palestinian Authority as a responsible governing party to accountability before the International Criminal Court if it does not, as it can and it must, remedy this ongoing and outrageous violation. We believe that we should all increase international pressure on Hamas and PA, as well as on the international community, to resolve our painful episode, especially the United States, that is the natural mediator and negotiator between Israel and the PA. Recently, there are numerous reports in the news that the USA and the UN are closing to reaching a deal with Hamas. Specifically, it is an effort sponsored by Egypt regarding the rehabilitation of Sinai and Gaza. The US administration has exemplified bravery when dealing with the Iranian and North Korea dictatorships. We would hope this would reflect on any negotiations with the animal terrorists that make up Hamas. Ladies and gentlemen, please take a good look at your own children and grandchildren. Think of how much they mean to you. Please let us not leave this world knowing that our son is still far and unburied. Please keep us in your hearts, and let's all remember that as long as Kol Israel arevim ze bazeh, we can and should do wonders. Bring Hadar home. Thank you.